All right, so this is our debrief out of the classroom. You can see we got the car window thing going on. We're completely. I'm not gonna say the word I used earlier. Okay, so anyways, so we just went into Donna's classroom, and
yeah, and it was good to see Danielle too.
Dang, yes, Danielle. I was like, who did we just see? Danielle. Okay, you saw Danielle's classroom. All right, what were your... So, let me remind you of the 3 things we were looking for.
Okay.
Rigor with assessments and instruction, rigor with writing, and then we wanted to we want to spend some time with Dontavius and Ezekiel.
Okay.
All right, so...
You have the context on Dontavius.
Yeah, so I'll add that piece, but walk me through the first 2 pieces. Like, what evidence did we gather, and what's our theory now coming out of this classroom?
Okay. So... I want to actually start with the rigor and writing piece. I know I was trying to get information about rigor in general by looking at the type of questions she was asking her students during the lesson. But what I noticed with the rigor and the writing is like a disconnect between like the mastery that she has for like her ELA tracker and what I saw in the students' portfolios for their writing, and thinking I didn't see a lot of deliberate connection between like what are the skills of a good writer, thinking about those 6 traits, engaging the reader, and just the things that you go through as a writer. I didn't see that necessarily captured, and I think because there's a disconnect between like teaching those ELA standards in isolation, which they're mastering in CRCT format, fine, but seeing that in the writing and seeing like what are the elements of a strong narrative, a strong persuasive piece, etc. The writing can definitely be improved. I just saw that disconnect, and that's where I feel like the rigor piece is missing, like actually teaching rigorous content as it applies to writing, not grammar skills in isolation.
Yeah.
Because those 2 things weren't connecting. What I saw from the ELA tracker to the writing samples was not connecting. And...
Can we pause there for a second? I fully agree. When I looked at some of the writing samples and looked at the names and I thought about the names of the mastery that we saw in ELA, I would have expected to see writing samples that were a lot more coherent and that had more like... But I think even the way we saw her teach her lesson, which we'll get to it for point number 1, I don't think the way she's teaching writing is going to get her there. Like, the way she's probably teaching writing is very much in isolation with she's just like focusing in on students to be able to like I wrote down her writing objectives actually. Crap, I can't read my handwriting. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. So like her, I can't read the rest of this, but it was like how does it was some piece of grammar, like how is this different from that, like how is and I don't even remember the right objective, but like all of her objectives, like her science one, how does energy flow through the ecosystem, the math one, how do we construct and interpret graphs, like she even in the way she taught her lesson, she was not asking her students
to do something.
To do something. She wasn't actually even asking them that how question, even though that was her objective. She was basically telling them, like even the lesson we saw today, she was basically telling them like, look, here's basically how to define an ecosystem, or here is what it looks like, and here's some examples of it. And I remember thinking when she was going through like, remember she had the kids vote on what they think is the right answer or not. She didn't really have them explain their answers though. And then when she had a kid come up to the board and like put different animals in the ecosystems, she didn't have that child explain their answers either. Like, it seems like these, I mean, if you're just looking at the basic level of the standard, they could and I'm sitting and I'm talking with Dontavius the whole time. He could tell me what an ecosystem is, and he can even tell me some of the different animals. I mean, he had no idea why an ecosystem is important. He probably, if I asked him to create an ecosystem on his own, he probably couldn't do that. And that's actually what she was asking them to do in one of the group when they broke into centers, like the group at the center. At the front, at the Promethean board, they couldn't do it at all. Like, I was asking them, what are you supposed to be doing? They're supposed to be building an ecosystem. They were just listing all kinds of living things, and they weren't putting them in any kind of order. They weren't explaining why it was an ecosystem that worked together. So I don't think they were getting the conceptual understanding of how an ecosystem works together.
So it's like creating the why for the students so that there's a connection.
Which was the objective.
Yeah. And so, yeah, and that's a problem to have question-based objectives and not student achievement-based. Like, what do your students need to be able to do by the end of this lesson in progress towards your overall goal?
All of her objectives were how objectives. How does this, how does that, how does this. They were not students will be able to do X thing. And maybe that could be something we need to come back to in a conversation with her.
Definitely, and I think that would be like really excellent step towards like more effective writing instruction. Like, what do you want them to be able to do?
Yeah.
Yes, they have the skill of being able to distinguish between different types of parts of speech, but what does that mean for their writing? What will they be able to do then based on that?
Two other things that I pulled out, and this is when she split them into groups, and I went around to the different groups, and I went to the high group, and I went to the group that was at the Promethean board where Dartavius was in. So, one, the high group, like where they were supposed to be just reading independently and then answering the questions. Like, I asked each of the people in that group, first of all, just what's their vision? What's their goal? What do they want trying to get out of this class? Like, why are they here? Some people told me they want to go to middle school, right? Some people, one person told me she wants to go to college, and then she changed her answer, so she wants to go to the Navy. One person said she wants to go to college, but she hasn't really thought about college yet, but she just knows she wants to go to college. But that had nothing to do with why they were here. They couldn't really connect that at all for me. And I went to that group because I was like, okay, this is clearly the high group based on the students, the data that we looked at, and based on the work that they were doing in that group compared to the work that other groups were doing. And when I spent time with that group wasn't behaving as if they were a high group. They didn't seem excited to be doing anything they were doing, and I was just sort of like, that was an indication of the level of student investment that was much lower than what I would have expected to see given the data for this class. So when I think about like the big picture, like, is this teacher and her students, are they on a mission towards a very meaningful place? I don't think so. I don't think they are. I don't think that they have a meaningful destination in mind that they're headed towards. It certainly doesn't seem like she's urgently pursuing a meaningful destination because of the way that she's instructing, because she doesn't necessarily know with a finite answer at the end of each lesson, like what her kids know. And then I feel like, we saw evidence of her kids. They're definitely bought into her, but they're not bought into where she's trying to take them. They'll do anything Danielle says, but I didn't get the sense that Danielle was trying to take them any place meaningful in that lesson. I mean, did you?
No. I didn't hear, like, why this is important. What does this mean? Like, things I would wanted to hear, like,
it's getting hot in this one.
Things about, being a scientist, why this type of learning is important, how building this type of knowledge helps us to better be able to understand our world around us, and like how it's going to help better prepare us to be better thinkers. Being able to think about a cycle like this is a high level of thinking that will prepare you to, really be able to engage in problems when you get to 5th grade and middle school and beyond. It'll be, just, I don't know, I wanted to hear more of the connection piece of the why. Like, why should students care about this? What does this mean? Like, why is this important? Even connecting it to, like, her short-term goals of, CRCT mastery, being prepared for 5th grade. Even that, I didn't hear it, At the very least, I would like to hear that kind of thing. And at the very, even better than that is, like, hearing how it connects. Yeah. Because I love, like, hearing, like, students knowing, like, this is going to make me, like, a better thinker. Like, being able to think through, like, ecosystem and, like, food chain. Like, it's, I don't know if that makes sense. But
I think those are the kinds of things that you would want to know, especially if you believed in her vision, that you would want to see her students starting to emulate that, let you know that they're invested in this and that they're, like, they're with her. They're on this path towards a very meaningful place. So this all leads me to wonder, one, like, pausing here with Danielle, and then we'll extrapolate it out to, like, thinking about how we apply this to a progress unknown person.